Good afternoon. Hope you had a meaningful and inspirational Passover with family, with friends, and you're reinvigorated as we get into the spring and summer months. So there's two types of people. There's those people that stayed home and had to make Passover themselves, and sometimes they say, boy, we can't wait for Passover to be finished. So much cooking, so much prepping, so much effort. And then there's those that go away on Passover programs to the islands, to all these beautiful areas, and they say, oh my gosh, Passover is too short. But in truth, there's a song that many people have and sing and say at the end of their Passover Seder, which says, Chasal Sidur Pesach. We have now finished and completed the Passover Seder, and now we move on. But interestingly, in the Chabad Haggadah, the Alter Rebbe, who's the founder of the Chabad movement, didn't put in the words Chasal Sidur Pesach, that the Seder has finished. And the reason he gave for that is because the Seder doesn't finish. The idea of being free, of leaving our limitations, our challenges, the things that restrain us, about being inspired by being truly free to connect and serve God, is not something that finishes a Passover. It begins. But then we take that energy, we take that inspiration, we take that love, we take that joy, and we bring it in to the rest of the year. We start counting the Omer. The moment we finish the first Seder, we get to show the second night, we count the Omer as we prepare to receive the Torah. We take that energy, we take that inspiration, and we infuse it into our day-to-day life. I told you the parable given by the Maggid, who says a story about the king who went with his whole entourage. They went into the desert for an excursion, and lo and behold, after the city, as quick as we could, and within 3 hours, you're gonna have water. The second was the engineering corps. The engineering corps said, listen, we're gonna get our best guys, we're gonna dig down here, we're gonna dig all day, find a well, and within 12 hours, 8 hours, by the end of the day, you'll have water. The king chooses the second one. And lo and behold, they dig all day, and by nightfall, they bring fresh, delicious water from the well that the prince drinks and quenches his thirst. But then the prince looks at the father and says, Daddy, looks at the king, he says, why did you take the more complicated, longer way? Why didn't you just send someone on quick horses, they would bring water and it would be fine? And the king says, you know, it could be that one day you're gonna be in the desert again, and you won't be with the king's whole entourage, and you'll be thirsty. If I just brought you water from the local town, what would it help? But now that I dug a well, the well will be here later too. And the prince looks at the king and says, yeah, Daddy, but listen, the sand will come and it's gonna cover over this well. We'll have no idea where the well is, so what's it gonna help? And the king looks at his son, the prince, and says, you're right. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna make a big sign and a marker, and it's gonna say, here, there's a well. And if you ever get lost and you're here, with a little bit of toil and effort, you'll be able to get fresh water. Says the Maggid, the same thing is true with the Torah and the mitzvahs. The holidays, if it comes to Passover, it's freedom. If it comes to Shavuot, it's Torah. If it comes to Rosh Hashanah, it's making God a king. Yom Kippur, forgiveness. Sukkot, God's embrace. These are wells that God dug throughout the year. That from there we get the calling, Mikrai Kodesh, we get that quenching of our thirst that allows us to continue through the year without having to be thirsty for spirituality. And that's really the message of Chasal Sidur Pesach. That the Alter Rebbe says, this Passover was a calling for us to quench our thirst and to be able to get inspiration and spirituality to go through the next few months till we come to Shavuot, till we receive the Torah, not to say Chasal Sidur Pesach, the Passover Seder is over, but to take that inspiration with us. I heard this remarkable story. The chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Israel Meir Lau, who's now retired, but then he was the chief rabbi. We all know he survived Buchenwald. I've mentioned many of his stories. But he says after the fall of the Iron Curtain, there was a time when many Russian immigrants were coming to Israel. And not only were Jewish immigrants coming, but non-Jews wanted to come because where else were they going to get in and get such a welcome? So they had to verify that they're Jewish in order to be able to take them, because one of the rules of Israel is that any Jew from all over the world has an automatic right of return to come to Israel, which is one of the reasons why Israel was established after the Holocaust, that every Jew should have a place to go. So this one Russian guy comes to the rabbinic court to prove his Judaism, and he brings two people. One guy says, listen, very simple. I was at this guy's bris in Moscow. I was at his bris 40, 50 years ago, whatever it was. And then the second witness was a Lubavitcher Chassid, an older man, a Chabadnik. And he says, listen, I knew your mother because she was a nurse in the hospital that I worked. And she was an avid chain smoker. She smoked 2 packs of cigarettes every day. But every evening she would take 1 cigarette out of her boxes and she would put it into a box. And after Purim every year, she would come to me with a box of 365 cigarettes. And she would say, here, go sell this and get me some flour on the black market so I can make matzah for my family. That's how I know she's Jewish. Rabbi Lau looks at this man and he says, I never met your mother. He says, but me, I celebrate Passover 8 days a year. Your mother celebrated Passover every day of the year, because every day of the year she was thinking, she was putting away a cigarette which was so dear for her, to her, that she should be able to properly have a Passover. So not only did she keep Passover for 8 days, but she kept Passover for 365 days. That's really the message of the Alter Rebbe when he says, no Chasal Sidur Pesach. We don't say that. We will never finish that inspiration. We will take those wells and reservoirs of spirituality and infuse it in our day-to-day life as we count over and we get ready to receive the Torah. Have a great day and see you tomorrow.